Ripped off, out of pocket, short-changed. No one likes getting a bad deal.
But knowing who to trust can be tough.
They said, we are not responsible. That's it. No further conversation.
So when your money is under threat and you think you've lost out, Rip Off Britain is here to help.
We'll be investigating the companies that you say are letting you down.
The policy was completely and utterly worthless.
And we're taking on the scammers who are causing heartache and misery.
And at that point, I knew I've been had, and I felt sick to the stomach.
So whether it's a mistake that's left you out of pocket or a blatant rip-off, we're here to help you find out what you can do about it. This is Rip Off Britain.
Hello and welcome to Rip Off Britain, here as always to help make sure that whatever you spend your money on, you really do get exactly what you're expecting, as well as everything that you're entitled to.
All too often, though, you tell us that you end up with quite the opposite. So today we're on the case for people who say that if they'd really understood what they were going to get, they'd have walked away, including customers of the roadside rescue firm offering breakdown cover, but not as we know it.
I was totally astonished and extremely angry that this company was just giving me the runaround.
Plus Etsy, the website that sells unique handmade gifts crafted by artisans, or so it claims. A year ago, we found some of those supposedly handmade items were actually mass-produced and readily available for less on the high street. And despite assurances that that would change, I'm afraid we've now found even more of them.
And the experts in our advice clinic are on the case of one couple who've been waiting a staggering 12 months for their car to be repaired. And they want the dealership to pull their finger out. So motoring expert Abigail Andre is here to advise on that one.
But first today, anyone looking to make eco-improvements to their home might balk a bit at the cost of things like solar panels, because while they save you money in the long run, it can be a big outlay up front.
So a scheme designed to drive down the cost by collectively signing up hundreds of homes could seem like just a ticket. And indeed it did for countless households across the country. But as some of those homeowners discovered, if the people behind that scheme choose the wrong company to deliver it, the implications can be very costly indeed.
It's the world's fastest-growing energy technology. As the rest of the economy has been in the doldrums, the solar industry is enjoying its time in the sun, with record amounts of energy being generated from solar power. 85-year-old Robert Radburn from Warwickshire has long been a convert.
I'd had solar panels in my previous home, and it made a very substantial financial contribution to the cost of electricity in the house, and at the same time it was helping the environment. So benefits all round, really.
But installing them isn't cheap. With the average setup costing thousands, Robert, understandably, wanted to keep costs down. So he was thrilled to discover that his local council was promoting a scheme that would do just that.
Solar Together offers you a hassle-free way to begin powering your home. You can be reassured that you're getting a high-quality product and a service, a great price too.
Those great prices would be achieved through collective bargaining, by which councils sign up to Solar Together and promote the scheme to residents. Then, Solar Together invites numerous solar installers to bid for all the jobs at once. According to the scheme's website, this bulk buying approach has led to savings of between 10 and 25% in the past. With that, and promises that all suppliers are put through a rigorous qualification process, Robert found it hard to see a downside.
Here was a company that was going to be vetting the eventual installer, and it had the backing of Warwickshire County Council, which I felt was increasing the reliability of the whole project 100%.
So, in March 2021, Robert was one of 680 Warwickshire residents to sign up with the firm awarded the contract, Green Energy Together. He paid £8,400 for 10 panels on the roof of his home. But when work began in December 2022, things immediately started to go wrong.
It seemed to be one problem after another. Promises to meet specific appointments came and went with nothing happening. The phone lines were impossible to get through to. All this was producing a lot of anxiety, and this went on for months.
It wasn't until February 2023 that the installation was finally, apparently, complete, though Robert was very much in the dark about his new solar panels.
There was supposed to be a handover pack, there was supposed to be certification. I got none of those at all, and they just disappeared. I didn't know whether the panels were working.
With his calls to Green Energy Together going unanswered, it was only through his neighbour,
Hello, Paul.
and fellow solar panel owner Paul Anderson that Robert was able to get some help.
Robert was quite upset that he had an installation which cost him thousands of pounds and he had no clue to whether it was working or not.
It gave me the opportunity to pour out my heart, really, because I was at my wit's end.
Paul agreed to have a look at Robert's system. As a former mechanical engineer, he quickly spotted some problems.
The inverter was broken at both ends. Wires were broken inside the main plug here.
Paul and Robert immediately called an electrician who got the panels working, but there was another problem. All along, Robert had been told he could sell any surplus energy generated by his panels back to the national grid. In order to do that, solar systems have to be covered by something called the Micro Generation Certification Scheme, or MCS. But in March 2023, Green Energy Together's MCS accreditation was suspended pending an investigation into the standard of its installations, which meant the extra income many customers had banked on to recoup some of the thousands they'd spent wouldn't be paid.
It's unbelievable. How can a chap like this be left in the lurch with nowhere to turn? They have been doing shoddy work, and there's people out there who don't know whether their systems are safe even. The whole situation is a shambles.
But any chance of the firm putting that right disappeared when, in July 2023, Green Energy Together went into liquidation. When we spoke to one of the company's former directors, he explained that the installation was initially delayed by a shortage of power storage. He went on to refute Paul's criticisms of the installation, stressing that he could only see minor snags which were not fundamental to the operation of the panels. He went on to say that any faults or failures are covered by the installation's 2-year warranty and would be covered at no cost to Robert. Meanwhile, Warwickshire Council told us that it was very disappointed about what had happened, but stressed that Green Energy Together was appointed by the company that manages the Solar Together scheme, not the council. Nevertheless, the council said it was doing everything it could to help resolve the situation, and that it had been assured that any installations not yet certified under the MCS scheme would be inspected and adopted by another provider. But Warwickshire is just one of the local authorities in which Green Energy Together won lucrative contracts, including Cambridgeshire, South Devon and some London boroughs, where around 1,000 people are reported to be out of pocket after paying deposits for systems that were never installed. While they and countless other customers wait for news, Robert is at least confident he doesn't have to go through whatever stress might be coming alone.
I am so grateful to Paul because it's come out of the blue, and I don't think he will ever know just what a relief he has been to have someone to turn to.
Well, with me now to talk about all that is Felicity Hanna from 5 Live's The Big Green Money Show and Radio 4's Money Box Live. Thanks very much for coming in, Felicity. And I'm also pleased to say that Robert and Paul, who we've just seen, are both joining us now. Robert, I do understand that Solar Together have had your panels inspected and uncovered some other issues, but that it's arranging for another installer to get in touch about completing that work and then what it calls adopting your installation, after which you will get that all-important certificate. So, taken a long time, but it is beginning to happen, is that right?
Well, that's what they say, but I have become very suspicious about everything they say, I'm afraid. When it comes down to it, the customer is losing out and is being made a nervous wreck, really, because nothing goes as it should.
Paul, when you stepped in to help Robert in his hour of need, what did you think when you first heard about the problems that he was facing?
Quite shocked and stunned, really, for a large company like Solar Together to have the endorsement of the local council to leave Robert in the lurch, and as I've since found out, hundreds of other people. It's unbelievable.
Well, I know, Robert, that one of the things that attracted you about signing up for the Solar Together scheme was that it had the backing of the council. How do you feel about that now?
Very disillusioned, because every piece of paper that we had, or email even, had the endorsement of Warwickshire County Council upon it. Even the best wishes of Warwickshire County Council were appended at the bottom of several of the letters, and it doesn't seem to count for a thing now.
Well, Felicity, I think we can hear a lot of upset, to put it mildly, in what we've just heard. But on the face of it, that kind of collective bargaining scheme sounds like a good idea. I mean, you get lots of people on board, you get a chunky discount. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it is a really good idea. It's a way for councils to help their residents come together, join together, club together, and get those discounts and green their homes, which lots of people want to do. They feel it's the right thing and that they ought to do it. But as we've just been hearing, people expected that these companies would be really thoroughly, really carefully vetted. And I think when you look at Green Energy Together, there were lots of warning signs, lots of red flags there from the beginning. So if you looked at online reviews, there were people talking about delays, missed appointments, not being able to get through to customer services, not being able to talk to a human being on the phone. And in fact, the review website Trustpilot, there were loads of 1-star reviews, and they actually deleted a number of 4- and 5-star reviews because they said that they were suspicious, and they put a warning on the company's page on their website. So there were red flags.
I mean, is it wise to leave the decision about a company to do work on your home to somebody else, even if that is the council?
No, I would always caution against giving up any kind of consumer choice. And actually, with this scheme, you don't. They can recommend a tradesperson to do the work. But if you do your homework and you don't like the sound of them or you don't think they're trustworthy, you can just refuse. You're not obliged to deal with that company. You've got to do your homework. You've got to understand your rights. And remember that local authorities, they almost certainly don't have the cash to put this right if it does go wrong. So it really is up to you to understand exactly what you're getting into.
Well, Paul and Robert, I know you're both fans of solar panels, so what advice would you have for people thinking of getting them installed, given all you've been through?
As we've just been advised, do your homework first. I'm afraid I took it at face value when you had the endorsement of the county council behind Solar Together, but it's proved virtually worthless, I'm afraid.
Well, I suppose you'd go along with that, wouldn't you?
I would absolutely say, and not just do your own homework, but also see what other rights and protections you can get. If you pay for even part of the installation or the deposit with a credit card, for example, and I'm not saying get into credit card debt, you can clear that debt straight away afterwards, but if you pay with a credit card, you've got extra consumer rights. The card company is jointly liable with the installer, and I've seen a lot of people who've been affected by Green Energy Together getting their cash back that way, so that's another way you can add a little bit more protection to your purchase.
Paul and Robert, thank you both very, very much for joining us today. And I think we're all very gratified to see that whatever happens solar panel-wise, you guys have formed a lovely friendship, and it's been very heartwarming to see it. Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you both very much, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.
When we spoke to Solar Together, it told us that all customers of Green Energy Together have now been offered a resolution. Those with outstanding deposits were helped to get refunds through their credit or debit card providers, and anyone unable to do this has been refunded directly by Solar Together, despite it having no obligation to do so. Solar Together said it had also funded any additional work required to complete installations, again over and above its obligations, and it said that the vast majority of these jobs are now complete, with the remainder on a path to resolution. Solar Together added that it has delivered 28,000 installations in 23 regions, delivering 10% of MCS-accredited installations in 2022, and that 18 such schemes were running at the time of recording.
Time now for our advice clinic, where we call on some of the nation's best experts to come to your aid.
Well, with me in the advice clinic today is the motoring expert, Abigail Andre. Abigail, welcome. Thank you for joining us. But we've also got with us Alison Williams, who's at home in Oswestry. Good morning to you, Alison. Thank you for joining us too.
Good morning.
Now, as I understand it, the problem is with your Honda car, isn't it? Back in 2022, the airbag warning light came on, so you got in touch with the dealership, which checked it out, and they quoted you £1,000 for a new airbag sensor. But that's not been the end of the problem, has it? What's happened since?
Well, basically, having gotten the quote, we obviously thought about it for a couple of weeks and then authorised the dealership to order the part. They said, should be here within 5 working days. We'll call you when it arrives and arrange to get the car in for repair. That's as far as it's got.
So how long ago was that?
Just over 12 months.
Crikey. So you're without the car, presumably. Where is it now?
Parked outside my house. We did drive it for the first few months, but once the MOT ran out in the middle of December, we were told not to take it for an MOT because it wouldn't pass, because the warning light's on the screen. And it's just sat there ever since.
This must have had a terrible effect on you and the family, hasn't it?
Well, it has. I mean, we live in a rural community. I'm retired. My husband isn't. So he takes what was my car to work, and I'm left sitting within 4 walls, or at least in our garden. And, you know, I can't go into town when I want to. I can't go to the supermarket without the car. So it's frustrating and it's annoying.
So what do you make of that, Abigail?
Well, Alison, I understand why you're frustrated, and the SRS sensor is a really important safety part, and that's why your car wouldn't pass its MOT, because it's really important to have that. Now, it's not helped by the global delays that we've got at the moment. We've got parts shortages in car manufacturing all over the world. We've got port problems. There's the Ukraine war as well. All those things have created a bit of a perfect storm for part delays, which doesn't help you, does it? But the thing is, your car is out of warranty. It wasn't purchased from this dealer, and they've already done quite a lot for you. Putting you in a courtesy car, for example, isn't something that they have to do, and it's more than what other manufacturers would have done.
It sounds like a hopeless case, really, doesn't it, Abigail? But is there anything that Alison can actually do?
So there's not much more what she can do right now than what she's already done. So she's already done a lot. What I'd say is just to keep the car running right, turn it over once a week and roll it back and forward, just on private land, so obviously it doesn't have an MOT. That'll stop the car from deteriorating whilst you're waiting for the part. Ask them to keep communicating with you so that you're kept informed maybe once a month. And what else I do is when the part finally does arrive, why don't you ask them if they can cheekily MOT it for you for free and see if there's a goodwill gesture towards the repair. There's no guarantee that they're going to give you that, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
No, it's worth having a go, isn't it? Well, we've obviously been talking to Honda about this, and they confirmed that the part indeed was ordered in September 2022. But because of the global shortage of semiconductors, it is still on a back order, which we've already confirmed. And as you've said, Honda provided a hire car as a gesture of goodwill. But because your car is out of warranty and was not, they say, bought from a Honda dealership, they're not able to extend the hire car any further. They say they do appreciate how very frustrating all of this is for you, but it and the dealership will keep proactively chasing the part. And once the issue has been resolved, Honda said that they will review the potential for any further goodwill gestures. So I suppose that's a little bit of news there, that after hearing what Honda and indeed Abigail have said, what's your reaction to all of that? You're going to hang in there?
We don't really have an option. I think the main problem is it's how long are we expected to hang on? I mean, it's been a year. Will it be 2 years, 3 years? Who knows? It's just an ordeal.
Well, as we say, it's not just a question of not being able to have the part. It really has had an impact on your life. Alison, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us. Well, I'm pleased to say that the part did eventually arrive. And in December, Alison was back on the road again.
Now, if you've got a problem you'd like our advice clinic experts to help with, then please do let us know. ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk is the email address. We're BBC Rip Off Britain on Facebook. Or, of course, you can always write to us. Rip Off Britain, BBC Media City UK, Salford M50 2BH. As we always say in the programme, please, please do not send us any original documents because we won't be able to return them.
In our old programme, we're talking about those times when something turns out to be very different to what you thought you were getting at the start, so much so that you wish you'd chosen very differently in the first place. It's something that our inbox is absolutely chocker with, isn't it, Angela?
You're absolutely right, Julia. I mean, it's particularly galling when it's a holiday or even a cruise. Now, for instance, Steve Charnock. Now, he's emailed us to say that his 2-week cruise was originally supposed to take in Gibraltar, but it ended up sailing in the opposite direction to the Canaries. And Jane Taylor says that her Atlantic cruise was supposed to start in Spain before sailing to Bermuda and then New York. Very nice, Jane. But she was later told that it's going to ditch Bermuda altogether in favour of a bit more time in Spain. Jane is not very happy about that.
Now, David Worthy is in a similar boat, obviously not the same one, but he emailed to say he had booked a 4-night cruise to Amsterdam for a friend's 50th birthday, only to be told weeks later that the cruise was now going to Rotterdam. Now, David says this cruise company told him that he could now enjoy the architecture of Rotterdam, to which his reply was, which I love, that he would have booked to go to Rotterdam if he'd wanted to see it. And to make matters even worse, he wasn't even entitled to a refund. Well, certainly I'd be furious at that one.
Me too. Well, ideas on a postcard for what to do in Rotterdam for a 50th birthday and keep it clean. Well, now, to another case of dashed expectations, but one far less glamorous than a cruise. If you shell out for roadside breakdown cover, chances are you're doing it for the peace of mind that if your car goes kaput, someone will ride to your rescue and get you on your way again. What you don't expect is to learn that what you've paid for isn't actually breakdown cover at all.
There's never a good time or indeed place for your car to break down. For Niall Adams from Beverley in North Yorkshire, it was right in the middle of the Worcestershire countryside, 180 miles from home. But in the face of frustration, Niall refused to panic, safe in the knowledge that they'd taken out a breakdown policy for just this eventuality. Niall's firm of choice was called Nova Direct, which proudly boasts that when life happens, we've got you covered. Well, for £20, Niall was sold.
I chose the Nova Direct Silver XS, which includes national recovery. It's very important for me because I go and see my mother and son 200 miles away, home assistance and breakdown recovery, overnight accommodation. So I thought that was a reasonably comprehensive package.
So when Niall's usually trustworthy Toyota failed to start, His first call was to Nova Direct. Life had happened, so did they have him covered? It started with a bit of a wait for somebody just to pick up.
We were then on the phone with music endlessly playing, with no indication of where we were in the queue, and I was pacing up and down the road, just getting incredibly frustrated.
Half an hour later, the call was answered.
I thought, wow, excellent, this is it. Salvation is at hand. But the person who answered the phone seemed to have no interest in what the nature of the problem was, no interest in where I was located. All he kept on repeating, no, sir, I just have to fill a form in and I'll ring you back. And I was astonished about that.
After waiting another half an hour for a call back, Niall's phone battery was down to 1%. Really worried about getting stranded altogether, he abandoned the car and used his remaining battery to organise a lift to his mum's house, which was nearby. From there, he called Nova Direct again and was asked to complete and submit a claims form.
They rang back within about an hour, OK, but they said, oh, no, that isn't good enough. We now need to see your car insurance. I then was getting the very firm opinion that they were trying to put as many hurdles as possible to prevent me from gaining access to the service which I had paid them for. I was totally astonished and extremely angry that this company was just giving me the runaround.
But with Niall's insurance documents back home in Yorkshire, 180 miles away, there was no way he could send them to Nova Direct. So he had no choice but to arrange for another firm to transport the car home, a task which set him back £780.
I was extremely annoyed about having to pay this £780 to have my car recovered. It's galling that I paid Nova Direct to provide me with a national recovery service and they didn't provide it. Those 2 days have been some of the most stressful days of my life, trying to get all this sorted out. So I would like them to acknowledge that they have not provided the service that they should have done.
When we spoke to Nova Direct, it acknowledged that Niall was kept on hold for longer than the company would like, and explained that he was asked to provide his insurance details because the car was showing as uninsured when it checked the motor insurance database. Niall has since shown us proof to the contrary, but says he didn't have his insurance documents with him when he broke down. So with Niall unable to confirm that his car was insured, Nova Direct says it was unable to provide assistance. When Niall later complained to Nova Direct, it investigated his case and offered to reimburse the cost of recovering his car as a gesture of goodwill, minus a £40 excess. But feeling that he is due some compensation, Niall declined this offer.
It's only that situation when you're broken down, miles away from anywhere. Do you realise how absolutely important car breakdown companies really are? I really regret now having chosen Nova Direct. It's not a mistake I'm going to make in the future.
Motoring expert Abigail Andre is back to discuss this particular one. I have to say, if I took out a breakdown policy, I would expect that somebody would come and get me. So what is it about this case?
Well, I've had a look into Nova Direct, and there's a couple of things, a couple of issues that I've come across that helped explain what is going on. So, for a start, what they're offering is an insurance policy. So, Nova's website FAQs state that it's different to a breakdown service policy. It's an insurance scheme, basically, which is the reason why if you break down, you ring them up, you ask loads of questions because those questions are trying to qualify your claim. Do you meet the claims criteria? And then you're speaking to a claims handler, so they've got to source a repairer to come out and sort you out. They don't have an in-house fleet of repairers. They've got to try and source somebody to come out to you.
Now, the thing is that often on this programme we talk about, no matter what the policy is or no matter what the situation is, that the terms and conditions are so complicated and so long sometimes that we're all guilty of not reading them properly. Was there something in these terms and conditions that really caught them out?
Yeah, some of the things are you're not covered for non-starting or electrical problems within the first 30 days, which none of the other providers say. You're also not covered if you've got an electric car. They won't cover them at all.
They're not up to date on that one, are they?
No, they better get with the programme. But also, they're not going to cover you if you've got an existing policy. It will invalidate theirs. And the weirdest one that I came across is if your car can actually move, even if it's not good for the car for it to move, you're not covered. It's got to be completely immobile.
Niall took out his Nova Direct policy after finding the firm on a price comparison site. But Abigail advises caution on that front.
I don't think that breakdown cover is best found on a comparison site because it's not always immediately clear what is an insurance policy and what's a breakdown service cover policy. And also, you're not going to find the big providers on there either. I would definitely use a search engine, shop around, because then you can see what every provider's offering, different prices and the different level of cover. And I'd always look at what the terms and conditions are, because you don't want to find out when you need it the most, that, oh, I'm actually not adequately covered. Yeah. I'd also recommend just really digging down into the terms. And if you're not sure, give them a ring before you buy the policy and ask them some questions. Is it you that's coming out, or is it a third party? When I call up and I've had a breakdown, will it be a claims handler, or is somebody going to dispatch a recovery van with no questions asked?
As a point of interest, if this has already happened to you, what can you do about it?
So if it's an insurance policy like the type that Nova Direct provides, insurers are registered with the FCA, so you can write a formal complaint. That's what I recommend that you do first. And then if they don't respond within 8 weeks, you can then go to the Financial Ombudsman, or if you don't like their final response, you can go to them too. And then what I would do is go on social media and Trustpilot and have a bit of a kick-off, really, so that other drivers can avoid this problem.
Name and shame.
Well, yeah, and so they should.
Well, Abigail, thank you very much indeed. We shall all look at our policies and make sure.
I hope so.
Thank you.
When we put Abigail's points to Nova Direct, it told us there's a reasonable explanation for every clause in its terms and conditions, stressing that all contractual documents are provided to all consumers prior to purchase, and that it's impossible to purchase a policy without certifying that these have been read.
Now, if you're looking for the perfect gift to make a really heartfelt gesture to someone special, then getting them something truly unique can be a really good place to start. But beware, because in 2022, we investigated one online marketplace where some sellers appeared to be offering unique handmade goods, but they turned out to be anything but. Now, the site said that it was tackling it, so we thought it was about time to see how well that clampdown was going. And shortly, I'll be finding out. But first, here's just a reminder of that first investigation.
Glossy advertising, a chic boho vibe, Etsy describes itself as the global marketplace for unique and creative goods. And that's its big selling point, that everything it sells on its website is either handmade, vintage, or crafted. Back in 2022, we caught up with glass artist Scarlett Leonard from Lincolnshire, who was using Etsy to sell her handmade glass homewares and jewellery.
So what I'm doing here is melting a base, which I'm going to press down into a flat disc.
Scarlett sells around 600 pieces each year, all through the Etsy shop that she started in 2010. It's the only place that she sells her products.
I have taken steps on Etsy to show the stuff I make is handmade.
One of Scarlett's most popular items is a range of eco-friendly, reusable straws. She even won an award for them in May 2020.
It's a really big thing for me. I got more traffic through to my shop. I don't think the phone stopped.
At £5 each, the price reflects the time and work that it takes Scarlett to make each one, and they soon became a hit. But Scarlett then spotted other sellers on Etsy marketing glass straws too, at a fraction of the price, which instantly made her suspect they might not be quite as unique or handmade as hers.
If I pop into the search glass straws, As you can see, the first one that comes up is packaged. I've seen it before. There are a few sellers which have this exact same packaging, the exact same product.
The product Scarlett spotted was this one: 4 straws and a cleaner for the bargain price of £4.75. The seller clearly states the straws are handmade, and according to Etsy's rules, if you sell handmade items, they must be made or designed by you. But we're not sure they are, because we found this on poundshop.com for, you guessed it, £1, and we're struggling to spot the difference.
It does sort of say to you, well, how are they handmade? It does make me feel sad that that can be allowed to happen.
Back in 2022, we'd also heard from Etsy shoppers who were unhappy when their handmade purchases turned out to be anything but. So we did some Etsy window shopping of our own and turned up plenty more items that appeared to be more high street than handmade. Take this handmade wooden coastal boat on sale for £15.99. But we spotted it for just £2.99 at the range. Also on Etsy, this handmade triple candle holder for £27.99. But isn't this the same one? Available from Aldi for less than half the price. We even found Etsy selling so-called handmade goods that were also being sold at well-known big brands such as Dunelm, B&M and Marks & Spencer. And remember, Etsy says that handmade should mean just that, and reselling manufactured goods is banned. At the time, Etsy told us it did understand the importance of maintaining the integrity of its marketplace to keep the creative spirit of Etsy thriving, which is why it spent at least $40 million on trust and safety in 2021. It told us that it was intensifying efforts to stamp out violations of its handmade policy by recruiting more moderators and strengthening its automated systems to steadily increase the removal of resold content.
Well, I'm joined now by Harry Kind from the consumer group Which and Katie from the Rip Off Britain team. And Katie, I think we heard at the end of that film that when we first covered this story in 2022, that Etsy told us, and I quote, that they were intensifying its enforcement efforts to enforce its handmade policy. But I think you're going to tell us all is not quite well, is it?
Well, there's definitely still a few items slipping through the net. So the first one I brought is this one. So this mirror is available to buy on Etsy. I'm going to show you the listing there. So this is $19.99 and it's listed as a handmade product. Unfortunately, we found the same one from Home Bargains for only $4.99, and we even noticed that the seller on Etsy had pinched the description from the Home Bargains website.
So they've lifted it completely?
They have.
Right.
And then we found these on Etsy, which are available for $8.99 each. And they're listed as handmade, and we were able to find those from B&M for only £1. B&M for only £1.50 each, so they're 6 times cheaper on B&M. And again, the pictures and the text have just been lifted and duplicated on the Etsy website. We then
You've been shopping.
Something a bit bigger is this coffee table, which is available on Etsy for $49.99. So if you thought you were getting a piece of handmade furniture for that price, you'd probably think it was a bit of a bargain. But unfortunately, we found it's also available from Georgia Asda for only £22, which suggests it's not really handmade at all.
It's an identical photograph, isn't it? Harry, what is going on here? I mean, clearly, people are able to buy these very items a lot cheaper than they are on this exclusive site.
Yeah, I think this is probably chancers basically going, here's a nice way for me to make £28 profit by buying a table in one place listing it on Etsy as handmade and making a huge amount of profit.
I mean, let's clarify. What is Etsy's definition of handmade?
Well, as you can see, it's not what we'd usually use to mean handmade. It can include someone who has designed the product, even if they ask a factory to make it for them, their production partners. Now, Etsy says you have to be very upfront with who has made this, who are your production partners, what design went into it. But it is a loophole that you could drive a truck through. I personally think that if Apple wanted to sell an iPhone as handmade on Etsy, they could probably get away with it under this definition. But even regardless of that, these are items that clearly break that policy, and yet Etsy isn't doing enough to stop them. And this is the same in all online marketplaces that we see, that there are sellers who don't follow the rules of the platforms don't enforce their policies strictly enough, and they claim that they're not legally responsible for the items being sold on their platforms. That needs to change at Etsy, it needs to change at the other online marketplaces as well, because if we can find these nice and easily, then they should be able to as well.
What is this doing to the reputation of people who are genuine, people who handcraft what they're doing? I mean, we saw them in the film.
Absolutely. It must be devastating to have these people undercutting you with these poor quality products when you have spent your time crafting something beautifully that is genuinely handmade. And what I'd also say is if you're buying one of these things for £20 and expecting someone to have made this by hand, then really you're not giving enough money to the artisan creators out there that we have in this country.
From both of you, really, I mean, what advice would you give to people then if they want to make sure that what they're getting, if they're looking on an Etsy site, really is genuine? How would they have found that these perhaps could be bought cheaper elsewhere, Katie?
We've just taken the images from all of these listings and done a reverse image search online. That's shown us all the other locations on the internet where you can buy the exact same product that's using that same image. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but if you can see, particularly in the case of the coffee table, where you can see that that picture is identical on both websites, I guess that really gives you a clue. And now that I've seen the real product, I think it's quite clear that it's not a handmade.
It's sort of like balsa wood, isn't it? Held together with a bit of glue. Yes. Well, we put all of this, as you can imagine, to Etsy, and it told us that it uses a combination of automatic controls, manual review, and user flags to continuously monitor the marketplace and identify policy violations. It added that users are also encouraged to report potentially violating listings via its website flagging tool. And I'm pleased to say that in the cases that we found here, Etsy has told us that it is removing the listings, and it is actually suspended one of the shops because they violated its handmade policy. Harry, if you're someone who has actually bought an item from Etsy, believing it to be genuinely crafted and handmade, and discover that it's not, what are your consumer rights?
Well, Etsy have a pretty good purchase protection program, so that if you bought something and it wasn't as described, it was the wrong colour, or it wasn't vintage, or in this case it wasn't handmade, then you can put in a complaint to them and they should process that for a refund. But otherwise, the Consumer Rights Act is pretty clear on this. These aren't of satisfactory quality, they're not as described, you should be getting a refund.
Harry and Katie, thank you both very much indeed. Buyer beware.
Absolutely.
Well, we're very nearly out of time for today, but I do hope that everything we've talked about helps you make sure that you don't end up shelling out for something that's far short of your expectations.
But if you do, then please do tell us about it. Because even if we can't help fix things for you, your story could be a really welcome warning for others. And you know, that can be really valuable information. Our email address, if you want to get in touch, is ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk.
Well, hope you know by now that our Rip Off Britain team are here. They're ready, willing and able to investigate those stories and indeed any others that you need our help with. So do keep them coming in. But until we see you again, thank you so much indeed for your company today. And from all of us on the Rip Off Britain team, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Fiona Bruce deciphers masterpieces from master copies of works of art in fake or fortune. Press red to watch on iPlayer now. The beautiful Rhondda Valley charms us over in Homes Under the Hammer. Next.